Welcome back once again to the Atheist Interviews. I am Mr. Atheist, or you might know me as Jimmy. We'll probably just go with Jimmy for the remainder of the interview. But we are joined today by the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers, Mandisa Thomas. Mandisa, say hello to the people, why don't you?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm very, very excited. Now you are doing an event with the Atheist Community of Austin coming up here in September. Is that right?
That is correct. I will be the guest speaker before the Back Cruise events in
Yeah,
September. I'm looking forward to it.
September 22nd, and I want to do something they haven't been doing on the other shows. I just talked about this on with Eric, and specify what the Bat Cruise is, because I had the wrong thing in my mind. But on that day, on September 22nd, at Trinity Church of Austin, which is at 4001 Speedway, Austin, Texas, you can find all of this on the ACA's Facebook. At 10 o'clock, you'll have Matt Dillahunty doing his magic show, and then at 2 o'clock, Mandisa will be giving a talk, presumably about your organization. Yes.
That and also a particular state of the community that is of importance to me when it comes to engagement and improving on that.
Very cool. And I think we'll even be talking about that a little bit here today. A little bit, maybe the whole time. We'll be talking about it here today. And then at 6 o'clock, everyone will meet at a pier, 208 Barton Springs Road. Again, all of that information is on the Facebook if you're interested. And they will cast off for the Bat Cruise. Now, everyone I've not been on a lot of cruises, so every time I heard about this, I was like, I wonder where they're going. Are they headed to like Jamaica or something? Where
Yeah.
it's a 2-hour cruise, for the record, and
Yes.
it's called the Bat Cruise. I guess because they go under this formation that like millions of bats live in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I
So
figured it had something to do with bats.
yeah,
And so, yeah, this will be very, very interesting.
millions of bats, apparently. That was the number that he gave. There will be millions of bats flying overhead. So look up, but not with your mouth open.
Right.
Yeah. That'll be super cool. Unfortunately, I won't be able to join, but I will be there at the next one. I half promise, maybe. I sort of promise. So, Mandisa, what we do with these interviews is we start with a thing called the flash interview, and it kind of gives a baseline of for the viewers to know a little bit about the background of the individual being interviewed.
Okay, sure.
What's interesting is everybody so far has had a pretty homogenous background as far as related to atheism and what religion they came from and everything. I actually, for the first time, had to mend the questions a little bit because I knew a little bit of your background, and so bear with me. Hopefully these are all just as good.
Oh, sure, no problem.
So, question number one: what part of the country were you raised in?
I was born and raised in New York City, Jamaica, Queens, New York.
Heck yeah, that's
Yeah.
best state in the world. Anyway, that's just my opinion. We can talk about pizza later too. But
Yes.
so then question number two would be, what part of the country do you live in now?
I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Have been here with my family now for 22 years.
Oh, wow.
Straight
Yeah.
from New York to Atlanta.
So you and I have both been in New York and Atlanta at the same times before. At the my grandparents used to live in Atlanta, and at the time we had moved to an Air Force base in Tennessee, and we'd go visit a lot.
Okay.
That would have been around 1998, I think.
Yes, I moved down here with my now husband and our daughter. She was 3 weeks old.
Okay.
And we moved down here at the like tail end of 97, just before New Year's. So
Very
we've
cool.
been here, yeah, since 98. So now, yep, 20 years.
Very cool. And then, were you born into a religious home? And then there's like an if so and an if not. I know the answer, but were you born into a
Yeah.
religious home?
I actually wasn't. I was raised in what you call the Black conscious community or the Black nationalist mindset. I pretty much was raised in a secular home.
Okay.
But I attended a lot of cultural programs and programs that focused on Black history and culture,
Mhm.
learning early on about systemic racism and injustice and atrocities committed against marginalized communities
Right.
in the United States and throughout the world. I wasn't formally indoctrinated into religion, but I used to sing in various churches with a voice instructor growing up. So
Okay.
I had like an outsider's view of Christianity in particular, and everything that I remember hearing was just like super duper creepy.
Gotcha.
And
So
so, mhm.
the follow up was going to be then, where was your like first exposure to religion? Was it that singing experience in church?
It was,
Okay.
yes. And also my paternal grandmother, my father's mother,
Right.
she was very religious. She belongs to an apostolic church, which is similar to Pentecostalism.
Hmm.
And so my mother rather, would allow me to go to church with my grandmother if I wanted to. And so I only went like a few times, but
Yeah.
yes, my first exposure to like the religion or the church was when I used to sing with my voice instructor.
Okay. Cool. Cool. And you sort of already answered this. I'll ask it again. But so were you surrounded then by a religious community?
Um, Kind of, sort of.
Sure.
There were a lot of people. There are still a lot of family members who were religious. My maternal grandmother actually wasn't.
Hmm.
She would celebrate holidays. There was no prayer at the holidays. She would
Hmm.
celebrate Easter with the Easter bunny and
Yeah.
candy. But yes, growing up in my neighborhood, there were a lot of religious folks. Some of my mentors were very religious. Some of the other people that my peers and others were very religious and spiritual. So yes, I was very much exposed
Sure.
to
Sure. Sure.
religion growing up.
Sure. Something I found too in discussions with people who had a mostly secular upbringing is that there's still usually like a notable individual in the family who was the first to depart from religion. Now I have the honor of being that in my family. I was the one who broke the Mormon tradition. But do you know who in your family would have been the first to depart from religion?
Now that I am not sure of, I
Okay.
just remember that again, my grandmother, again that secular influence,
Right.
and her, and my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, not being very religious at all. And now I had a few uncles who were, Christian and Muslim. They belonged to the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
So I experienced a variety of beliefs and thought within my own family.
Interesting.
I think I was the first one, though, to actually openly say that I was an atheist
Okay.
and actually become an activist.
You are
So,
so good at answering my future questions, because the next one was, how
yes.
old were you when you actually professed for the first time publicly to being atheist or come out as atheist?
Well, actually, I can answer that again
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
the first time I acknowledged that I was an atheist was when I was 14 years old.
Okay,
I was in high school, very militant, very, Black power,
okay.
power to the people.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I remember someone asking me, was I an atheist? And I asked, well, what does that mean? And I was told, well, that means you don't believe in heaven or hell.
Right.
And I said, well, that sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I really didn't. I remember trying to reconcile it in my head when I was younger
Right.
and not really being able to.
Gotcha.
So that was the first time. But then I re-identified as an atheist in 2010. And so from there is when I really asserted my atheism and
Right.
became and got active in the community.
An activist, atheist activist, or active atheist, I think is the official term.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. I'm gonna and part of that I'm actually going to in during the broader interview. I want to come back to part of that. So, but in just running through these, did you experiment or check out any religions? Did you play with being a religious at any point during your
I
talk?
kind of toyed with the idea of being spiritual. I said I was
Mm.
spiritual for a number of years.
Yeah.
I had already made up my mind that I would never be a Christian. At one point, I tried to believe in a God. I went to a few church services that were
Hmm.
very, or, I've been in some religious settings that were very moving and
Hmm.
uplifting, but I would call myself spiritual. I would
Right.
believe in a higher power, I believe in a creator, but never actually diving into any form of belief.
Okay. So it almost sounds like almost like a level of deism with also like, how did Bernie Sanders describe his religious views? Like a deism with a we're all in this together and connectedness kind of thing.
Correct.
Okay, cool,
Yes.
cool, cool. I every time I hear a person who was raised secular, like the way that they approach the world and these things came to them and the way they evaluated them, I'm always so jealous. It's like, oh my goodness. Okay, we did that. And we did the first professed. And then these are just, these are more tidbit questions. Your favorite atheist author, communicator, or educator?
Oh gosh, that's such an awful question to ask.
We can skip it if you want. We
No,
can,
no, because I have there's so many.
yeah,
There's more than one.
sure.
So one of my favorites is Matt Dillahunty, hands down. You know,
Okay.
I have to say that. Watching the Atheist Experience and actually meeting him, watching him speak,
Yeah.
and then getting to know him.
Yeah.
So I mean, oh my gosh, he's one of my favorite people ever.
It's funny. Every time him and I interact, it's like, okay, we have this thing to do, but then it's like, well, we both have, he's a magician now. I was a magician in college. And so we just start talking about magic and then it's like, oh crap, now we only have 20 minutes left. But
Right.
yeah, he's the nicest guy. And by nicest for me, it's, I mean, you'll understand this as a New Yorker, the ability to like give each other shit just the right way. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And another person is Jeremiah Kamara, who
Okay.
is he is the author of the books Holy Lockdown, does the Black Church. Gosh, I forgot the title of the name. I forgot the exact title, but it's Holy. Oh, yeah, Holy Lockdown. Oh, does the Black Church. In I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
And
Yeah.
then also the new Doubting Thomas, the Bible, Black Folks, and Blind Belief. He also produced the documentary Contradiction. And so he's working on another one as well. One of just the most awesome people in the world. He also created a YouTube series called Slave Sermons. And so it's available, you know, online. If you Google if you put in Slave Sermons, you'll find a bunch of series. And another person is my sister from another mother, Bridget Crutchfield, who is one of our board members for Black Nonbelievers and the founder and she heads up our Detroit chapter.
Very cool. So I was adding Jeremiah to my list of authors to go look up after, because oftentimes people come in with others and I accidentally closed my outline and it signed me out too. So I'm just getting that back up here. But yes, all good. Let me.
Yes, and I just remembered the name. Does the Black Church limit progress? Okay, yes.
And that's the name of the book, or was that one of the articles?
That's the name of the book.
Okay, cool. So if you could have dinner with any individual, present or in history, who would that individual be? I know. I come with the tough ones.
Yes.
These are the thinkers.
I think I would like to have dinner with Malcolm X.
All right.
He is one of my heroes.
Yeah.
He very, very outspoken, very influential to the Black community.
Yeah.
Was able to reconsider his views based on evidence and based on talking with other people. So he's very much a people person. I would love to like pick his brain and talk with him more.
I was just in a debate. Unfortunately, it was one of those ones where I was like, oh, I wish we had filmed that, but maybe just because I took the better position, obviously, but it was a debate on whether or not for civil rights, if you needed both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. My goodness, that is not a name I should. Oh, what a brain fart! That makes me look great here. Whether you needed both, and I took the side that yes, you do. Whereas this guy was just wrong. Anyway, but yeah, no, very interesting. Yeah, good. All good answers. That is the end of our flash interview. All right, so we are going to jump straight into the full interview, and a lot of these questions I think are going to be thinkers too, but in a different. These will be thinkers that I know you've thought about because I've watched a lot of your stuff, and so one thing that I saw that was kind of interesting or that I've picked up on. I grew up Mormon, and there's when I'm helping a person with their deconversion, it's clear that that community and even the ritualistic going to church every Sunday and stuff, that those are things that are hard for them to let go of. And so oftentimes with Mormons, ex-Mormons, you have to find a replacement for that. Is that something that is true too of Black communities who church is very important to? And if so, what should that replacement look like? What should, on the secular organization side, what should we be creating as a replacement for church or other rituals?
Well, what was interesting about our conception about for creating Black non-believers in that community is that, for us, the Black community outside of churches, very lively. We like to, we do like to hang out. There's a lot more that many believers and non-believers have in common,
Sure.
especially as our thoughts towards, what's happening in the United States, the state of the Black community.
Right.
But we wanted to put more of the Black community into Black non-believers,
Right.
and also into the secular community, because many of us have the community needed to look like those who I guess people didn't think we existed. So it's like, isn't necessarily ritualistic as far as church. We get together, we have meetings, there isn't necessarily any singing or it doesn't have to be as frequent.
Right.
But also the things we like to do. Many of us, when I go to functions, I like to sing. I do like to sing. I like to dance. I'm a hip hop fan, a huge hip hop fan. Definitely old school. I'm a Tribe fan to the day I die.
Oh yeah.
So
very cool.
Injecting that flavor, if you will, that so many secular organizations lacked, is what Black non-believers also sought to do, was to show that not only do other Black atheists exist, but we are products of our community, and we bring that with us.
Sure.
And it's normalizing that part of us. So we weren't trying to reinvent any wheels.
Yeah.
It's just taking what's already there and showing folks that, the religious do not have the monopoly on fellowship and getting together.
Right.
And pretty much everything that they do is secular anyway.
Right.
But it's how they do it. It's the premise of why they do it as well that is different. And so that's what we sought to do at Black non-believers. Yes. Okay. Finding and drawing out those Black atheists who were already there. They didn't realize that there were other Black atheists out there, which is still a thing. It is still very, very common for people to remark that they thought they were the only ones. And granted, that tends to be pretty common. And we did want to build that community, but nothing, mostly based on, definitely getting together, featuring, guest speakers and stuff. So it is sort of ritualistic, but not to the point where people have to, are obligated to have to come. So
and give us 10% of your stuff.
Exactly. I mean, of course, all of our organizations need money to run, just to put that out there.
Sure.
But, but we really wanted to show that, many of us just aren't like coming out of, the dust, if you will. Many of our experiences can be painful, but we also have lively experiences. And that, we're bringing something to the community that is starting to change, but something that is still lacking, which is more of the social engagement and what people engage on, the science and the science, the skepticism, the information, education is one part, but many of us are music lovers. Many of us have so many other things in common more than that. And so being able to reach that everyday atheist, people who may not necessarily have found the community, through, or who have let go of religion through extensive research. Just understanding that, look, this stuff doesn't make sense. That's it. I would like to find others who can relate.
Be around them.
So, yes.
I've talked about it too, like the number of events when you go to like your local atheist chapters page, and it's like, okay, on this week, we're going to hear some white guy talk about science. Next week, we're going to hear some white guy talk about science. You could do something other than just white dudes talking about science.
Yeah.
We can have a dance. Atheists aren't Mormons. They can
Yes.
dance.
Yes.
I like to attack Mormons for dancing. I don't know if you've ever been to a Mormon dance, but oh
I have
man.
not.
Besides having to be a foot apart,
Oh gosh.
yeah, it's funny. You would think because a lot of Mormons are raised on the piano as well. I mean, that's a pretty common thing that Mormon kids do. And you would think they would have some rhythm with the fact that they have to have that metronome on their piano every day, but none whatsoever. Anyway, so it sounds like more of a variety of things to do and ways to meet and socialize would be helpful in all over for atheists as far as trying to go after a more diverse community as opposed to another science lecture every single time.
Yes.
I'm so bored of them, and there's only like 10 lectures, and everyone's just repeating the same 10 lectures.
Yes, and that's another thing. It's like for those who are outside of the community, and for people who the misconceptions about atheism and that how evil we are and stuff, like, you would be so disappointed to know that I mean we even other atheists complain about how boring some of the events can be.
Oh yeah.
And they were like, no, this needs to change. It really does.
Oh, we're gonna liven things up with a book club. That was something that happened locally. Oh my god. Anyway, oh my goodness. So I wanted to talk about something though that you kind of touched on there, as far as the believer community, the black believer community. Is there a perception of atheists that we could be improving on? What is the perception to the black community of what atheists are? I know, like, again, growing up Mormon, I'm going to drink every time I mention being Mormon, but our perception of of atheists rather are basically that they are antichrists, like that they are just wicked people going around trying to trap you. They have no moral compass or anything. Is there something similar to that in the black community, and what should we be doing to destigmatize, if that does exist, that label of atheism?
So here's the thing about the black community. So of course, the numbers are still staggeringly high.
Sure.
In our community, while the number of religious nuns are rising.
Yeah.
In the black community, it's like the numbers are 87%. And it's still pretty high. So here's one of the misconceptions here, that it isn't just that atheism means godlessness.
Right.
In the black community, if you identify as an atheist, I just had an exchange with a Hebrew Israelite that contacted us on our public page on Facebook. When I said that we didn't believe in God and he said atheist, he immediately equated us to wanting to be like white people, that you're rejecting being black if you identify as an atheist. It is not only seen as being godless, it's also seen as being like wanting to be like those white devils. And a few years ago, I had a black woman actually say that to my face, that she couldn't believe that as a black woman, I had the nerve to identify as an atheist in front of these white devils. So that becomes that is an extra added stigma that comes along with, with identifying as atheist, and it calls into question your being black, as if as if the black experience only includes being religious or having a religious nature. So the community would do very well to think, and many white folks don't even think about their own sense of perception, because for when people ask, well, why does there need to be a black non-believers? That's separatist, that's racist. Most everyone in their circles are white. Yeah. So they really don't have much, and then you have some black folks that ask that too, but they've been so far removed from what those challenges can be, which would be ideal. I wish we didn't have to address those. I wish we
Yeah.
didn't have to have them.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
a reality. And
Yeah.
yes, so that is also what we're dealing with here. This notion that you are rejecting not just your community, but also your Black identity if you
That's
identify as if you call yourself an atheist.
that's so unfortunate because I know, take your shot. Growing up as Mormon, when people leave, it's often heartbreaking for them. I left because I was trying to prove Mormonism true, and so I can't say that I was ever called a race traitor. I absolutely wasn't, but I definitely got a lot of like, you're turning your back on your family now, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what am I supposed to do? I can't hold this belief in my heart, and if they're going to disown me, which my parents haven't, so I don't want anyone to be mad at my parents,
That's awesome.
but
Great.
a large amount of my family and my community growing up definitely did. I don't feel like, I understand that I'm the one that's being separated, but I felt like a massive people turned their back on me, not myself then, and that's so frustrating to hear. I mean, that's such a smaller scale thing, it seems like, for me, because I had plenty of non-Mormon friends and a community around me that didn't care about whether I was Mormon or not. But to be told you're betraying your race, that's so.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned too, and I had a question about this because I was positive it has come up because I have a Facebook and I've seen what people say when like the BET awards come up and they're like, well, where's the white entertainment awards and that sort of thing. Did you, when creating Black non-believers, and it sounds like the answer is already yes, but I'd love for you to expound on it, have that reaction of like, why are you making this? That's racist or that's separatist or whatever.
The first time I was invited to do a podcast was when I seriously encountered that.
Okay.
But the premise for starting Black non-believers, and that unfortunately that unfortunately reconfirmed why we had to do it.
Right.
But also the point was that, okay, well, we didn't see that many Black people in
Right.
person at these atheist events.
Right.
And some of the experiences that I had heard about from other Black atheists when they attended predominantly white meetups, where I actually got a chance to experience that. And so, but it was also to show that, okay, well, it was also to prove that, we know there were more of us out here.
Right.
The Black community isn't totally defined by the religious. So it wasn't we knew we had a job to do.
Sure.
We had to bring out more of us. So
Right.
it being racist didn't even come up because
Yeah.
we're like, look, we're trying to reach other Black folks and
Right.
really trying to show the Black community that we're here. And yes, the secular community as well.
Sure.
But we weren't separating ourselves, which was why that came as such a shock.
Right.
Because we actually we availed ourselves to the secular community when we were formed. So, and then that's when we started discussing our experiences,
Right.
Discussing when it comes to issues regarding race and race perceptions and racial justice. People needed to hear that.
Right.
And people needed to know to adjust, their attitudes as well as their actions.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if we were separating ourselves, we wouldn't bother engaging the community.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
So that was a bit odd. But then, I think when you see a group that specifically is not exclusively to, but specifically trying to target a specific demographic, there are people who are, uncomfortable with that. And there are things that they never had to think about before. And so over time, I began to understand that a bit more, even though I don't have to accommodate it.
Right.
But I just remember like, wow, this wasn't being done to try to spite anyone.
Right.
It was because there was a need for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny how you see that across the board, where a traditionally marginalized group basically just says, hey, we're here. We want to support each other and be a part of the broader thing. I see it a lot on the Pride and the LGBT community. And it's like, well, where's the straight Pride parade? The straight pride
Yes.
parade was the last 10,000 years. Sorry if you missed
Yes.
it.
That's also going on in the Black community too, the
Right.
straight Black pride thing.
Right.
And it's like there are quite a few, there is quite a bit of homophobia,
Right.
particularly amongst the Black conscious community.
I see. Yeah.
The ones actually the ones I grew up around.
Mm.
They're saying that it's, they're trying to tout that it's scientifically or historically not, blacks, or like homosexuality was forced on Black folks by Europeans, which is utterly, yes,
I've never heard such a thing. My goodness.
we have, and that's
Yeah.
also another thing.
Wow.
We have heard that stuff.
Right.
And it does make a difference which community you're coming from and the things you hear. And
Right.
that's what the broader secular community needs to understand.
Absolutely.
That there are different encounters for different communities.
Right.
And so we can't pretend that everyone's experience is the same. That is disingenuous.
And it's also, yeah, it's disingenuous, and it's, can I just say downright bitchy? It's like a level of, it's like a subconscious, like, we've decided what the baseline experience is, assimilate or go somewhere else.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's gross. Borderline, downright bitchy. That's
right. It's like if you
quote of the day.
Yeah, it's like it. Yes.
Yeah. That's, oh my God. So, and it's so funny. You, more than any guest I've had so far, you are so good at knowing what questions I'm going to ask.
Okay.
Because you had kind of mentioned about like that first experience, or that you had heard other people's experiences and then experienced yourself going to the first predominantly white meeting. I actually had this with my friend Eric, who is a Black atheist. We were talking about this recently, and he was talking about like, he went excited for this first meeting, and then he left feeling like, oh, good, another group that wants to make me a token, because he felt like he spent the 2 hours just telling a group of white guys that, no, I agree, you're not racist. Is that becoming typical? And if so, how do we stop that? Because that's so patronizing, it seems to me.
It is. There are a lot of folks who are, and I think I tend to be more patient when it comes to discussing these. I tend to give a lot of how-tos and do's and don'ts. Yes, you find that there are, white folks there, when they see a Black person, they will just automatically assume they start getting very defensive. And it's like they're looking to ease their comfort, or what what we call white tears. And so, all of a sudden, it becomes more about their feelings more than the person that they're engaging with.
Right.
And it's like that people, folks need to really reevaluate the questions that they ask.
Sure.
And it isn't always up to us to provide all of the answers that they're looking for. Like,
yes.
It is not always my job to give a lesson in Black history and Black atheism.
Right.
Some of that stuff, ideally, everyone should know.
I was just going to say, there's so much parallel to right now. So I'm very active with a large group of transgender friends who are activists. And it's like, we are so tired of hearing these same 20 questions. You got Google, go look at Google. And so I get that, like, don't expect us to answer these same, there's some work you got to do yourself. Don't wait. Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's so, it makes me cringe on the inside to And I mean, certainly I feel, tell me if any of my questions have been stupid so far. Don't indulge me.
No, you've been fine.
Okay,
I don't like to generalize. It's been one of the great things about engaging the community is seeing the different folks who really are passionate and who really do care about the improvement and betterment of all atheists, which is pretty awesome. Sure. And also the white folks who will check their fellow white folks. That's awesome too.
Yeah.
So,
and in no way am I trying to virtue signal or be one of those. Yeah, come on, other white folks. But it seems to me like the answer to the question about Eric's experience, for example, is a lot of like, first of all, it's like the kid who shows up to driver's ed and his first time driving is with that instructor. Like, you should have been doing this at home with your parents. Do a little bit of the work yourself and know when to listen instead of talking all the time.
Yes, absolutely. That is another huge thing too.
I wanted to ask you too about this is something that as both a broad but also a specific topic for you that I've tried to talk to with people about, and it's really hard to figure out who is who. So who, and this is a little bit veered off topic of the general thing, but I there are so many opportunists popping up in the
Hmm.
movement going,
Oh,
oh, hey, I see that platform of yours. I'd sure like to borrow it. And then once they get out of it what they can, they go. Are you seeing that a lot happening with Black non-believers? And what is an audience? How is an audience? Should an audience who's watching something, what should they look out for where they go, I'm pretty sure this person's here for themselves and not for us?
yes. So I do. I've crafted a talk that I've done a couple of times now called "Everyone Ain't Gonna Make It."
Right. I've seen that one. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
so the blatant opportunists are the ones who come in and they only want to share what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they have a YouTube channel
Right.
or whether there is a certain cause that is important to them and they want you to implement it in some way.
Right.
They're only interested in participating, but you notice that mostly everything is there's something wrong with what you're doing, but yet they have the answer for it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they aren't necessarily participating. They may come one time and then they want to jump in and want to just start working with you on stuff,
Sure.
or they want to propose something, and then really it just becomes about what they want. And
Right.
that is, I have encountered that since day one,
Right.
since 2011. And there have been a few of these opportunists who have been able to advance as a result of being involved with Black non-believers, because
Sure.
we have been a springboard for authors who needed members who questioned, who interviewed members for research for their books. We have featured other guest speakers to speak with our group. So
Right.
we want to grow
Right.
that part of the community, because it actually creates evidence as well.
Sure.
So
Sure.
evidence about organization, evidence about growth, and
Yeah.
just evidence, people stuff that people can reference. So, but
Yeah.
there have been quite, and I must say that it's been mostly men.
Yeah.
It's
I
been
believe you.
mostly men who
Yeah.
do this,
Yeah. I
and
believe.
it's like, it's like, and some of them, it's like, well, first of all, it's like they can't believe that there's a woman at the head of this organization,
Sure.
and it's
Sure.
like, if we can't be propositioned, then we'll be disrespected,
Right.
and
Right.
it's like, well, they're just supposed to come and dazzle us with their
Right.
brilliant ideas and their brilliant things, and then, oh well, we're just supposed to want to work with them. And
Right.
the one thing that we've always been careful to do is vet folks.
Mhm.
We don't just, even if you say you're Black and atheist,
Right.
there are a lot of people who carry a lot of baggage with them, whether it is still religiously based, societal based, and stigma based.
Yeah.
And we encourage people to check themselves and get help for that,
Sure.
because we're not psychiatrists.
Right.
We
Right.
cannot totally save you. There
Right.
are things that you need to do for yourself, and we are glad to help, but you cannot use us.
Right.
And there are people, and then
Right.
there are people who have been able to, use our name and get further, but then they turn around, and I guess because they didn't get exactly what they wanted,
Mhm.
they're like, well, fuck them.
Right.
They're like, whatever,
Right.
which is fine with me. I could care less about that, but yes.
I almost wonder if you don't want to, the more volatile ones you can probably filter out more quickly. It's that one that comes in and is like, oh, look at all of this infrastructure. Boy, if only they see what I could do with it, and try to work their way into upsetting
Hmm.
the apple cart, as my British mother might say.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I also have so I'm a YouTube content creator, and I have on my end, you also get subscribers who try to weaponize their support of you. So this last week we did a live show where we were talking about Sarah Sanders and how she had said that her looks were attacked. And I was like, I'm not in favor of attacking a person for their looks, except for when you were a bitch. Then afterwards, I'm kind of okay with calling you ugly. And I said something like, so I think you look like your soul looks. And a person in the thing was like, I'm taking my subscription, or if you do this again, I'm taking away my subscription. I was like, okay, why don't you just take it now then? Because I don't want you. I'm not looking for followers who are like, let me tell you how to run your channel. That sort of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's always I understand and I try to be very careful and mindful about what I say and who might, take offense or who might be bothered by it.
Right.
The thing is that, we can't please everyone.
Right.
And if someone is truly that bothered with it, then just go ahead and go.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. that whole situation, the other situation just annoys me too. Like, she didn't attack your look. She said you had a perfect smoky eye. And I work with a lot of models for a living because a lot of my art is photo based. Your smoky eye is not perfect. Just saying. Anyway, this was, I want to make sure did we cover everything? Actually, so this is one that I find every community has a different answer for. So this one would be extended specifically toward Black atheists who are still closeted atheists, they're thinking about coming out. What resources that can the community of atheism or secular and atheist communities, what resources should we be offering and extending to them who need help with the actual process of coming out to their family and their friends who want to have that experience but need some sort of support?
Well, Black Nonbelievers as an organization does partner with Recovering from Religion, which is a great resource.
Sure.
They host in-person meetings.
Sure.
They are semi-public. They also have a hotline where people can speak confidentially to others who have been there and who can help with that process.
Okay.
And that's also what we have done with Black Nonbelievers in our meetings and our events. We build that community, and we also, if people have questions for us about how do I come out to family, how do I, deal, even if they're closeted, we don't. We don't require our members to be out.
Right.
I don't think any atheist organization, secular organization should.
Right.
But there are some, like Recovering from Religion, who concentrate solely on that process.
Right.
Helping, definitely finding others who are able to provide that sense of not just comfort, but that support and that encouragement to, to go through that process and become comfortable with themselves first and foremost.
Very cool. I love that. I know it's an attractive prospect, I think, to a lot of people who just need that extra little push, because most of what you hear in these communities is like, oh, it was so great when I finally came out. I mean, there's a little tension here. We had fights here, but now on the other side of it, like, my family knows we finally get along. They know that atheists don't have horns under their hair. And so I know it's something that a lot of people want to be on the other side of. And so I think Recovering from Religion Foundation is wonderful.
Yes.
So just to end things off, I'd love to give you an opportunity to tell people a little bit more about Black Nonbelievers, where they can find the website or events or whatever, wherever they should be following for media things as well. And then we'll have one more thing before we leave.
Sure. You can find us first and foremost on our website at blacknonbelievers.org. It reroutes to blacknonbelievers.wordpress.com, but it is Black. You can type in blacknonbelievers.org and the website will come up. We are also for the website, before I get to any other social media engine. Yeah. Every one of our chapter affiliates on our website, you can connect to our meetup groups. Cool. We are all on Meetup. That's where we post the majority of our events in our areas. So you can connect through us. You can connect to us through Meetup, through our website. You can also find us on Twitter at B Nonbelievers. The B and N are capitalized. We're also on Facebook. We have a public page at facebook.com /Black Nonbelievers.
Cool.
And we do have a closed Facebook page as well. That's for our, for the members who really do need to find and connect with us.
Okay.
And so, yeah, you can, we're pretty much all over, we also have a YouTube channel at Black Nonbelievers Inc. So if you type in Black Nonbelievers Inc., you can find some content that we have on YouTube.
Perfect.
And we're YouTube, Meetup, Facebook, Twitter, and on the web.
Very cool.
And on our website.
So out of curiosity, is there a plan to ever take it international too? Go over to Europe?
In the near future, that may be a possibility.
Cool.
And that's a lot of that's some research there, and redoing our our nonprofit status. But in the future, that may be that's a possibility. Yeah,
it just popped in my head. I mentioned earlier having the British mother. My mother's side's all English, and so in talking to atheists and people out there, there certainly would be a European market for not market, but demographic, but people who would respond well.
There's a London Black atheist, and they can be found on Twitter. So they do have a presence there. There
Good.
Are like African atheist groups. Some of them may be closed, but they're definitely they're popping up.
Great.
And it's been great that we've been able to to find that and to connect with others who are doing similar work. So that's been awesome.
Very cool. So the very last thing I do on all of my shows, and it's very similar to kind of what you just did with that Twitter, and also one of the questions I asked earlier, but it's I ask every guest to give a channel on YouTube that they think, or a podcast that they think any of our audience should be listening to, especially something relevant to your cause. So a channel or a podcast that you think the audience should be aware of.
Well, there's so many.
I know,
right
and I'm the jerk to be like, pick
there
one.
There are so many. Yeah. So I'm trying to think here because there are quite a few, but I would say some of my favorite people that are doing podcasts, of course, are Seth Andrews, the Thinking Atheist.
Sure.
Who's another person that I love dearly.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
But also, too, I think that is pertaining particularly to Black. There's an angry Black rant on YouTube, Ishmael Brown, who does speak to the Black atheist experience.
Sure.
So you might want to check him out as well. I was featured on his show last year, 2016.
Great.
Yes, that would be another one.
Cool.
There's just so.
I know.
Gosh, there's so many.
I'm the worst. What's funny too is this is the problem we run into every time, and some masochistic part of me is like, I'm not going to warn anyone. I could send it in the message reading up. By the way, have this ready. No way. It's really cruel of me, really. But no, that's wonderful. And all the links we mentioned today will be in the description below. So go look for them. Obviously, at the very top, we'll have all of the links for Black Nonbelievers and specifically Mandisa's cause and charity and those social media. And then below will be all the other referenced links to everything. If you have anything else you'd like to say to our audience, and then we'll give you the last word, and then we are out of here.
Thank you. I also have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/Mandisa Latifa. You wouldn't be able to search it because it contains adult content. So you would have to type in the link directly.
Okay.
So in the links that you have there, just look that up and you can type on it. And please become a patron. I really do appreciate the support. I create community building content and discuss atheism-ish issues, atheism-ish topics that wouldn't necessarily be discussed from a like just traditional point of view. And I share a lot of my thoughts too. I share my brain farts on there,
very cool.
which is something that I may not share publicly, but it's a good better way to get to know me, how I work. some of my upbringing and some of my experiences. So
Very cool.
patreon.com/Mandisa Latifa. And also I'd
Perfect.
like to mention the Inciting Incident podcast, which will be another one.
Cool.
Yes, thank
Great.
you all very much for tuning in. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And as always, to the audience, remember, stay skeptical, my friends.